just wanted to show you how beautiful this morning looks like. Let me open the window for you so you can see. So there's already little buds coming out of the trees. It's a sure sign of spring. You can hear the birds. So it's early March here, and I love the spring light. It's so gorgeous. So I'm not even in the studio yet. I came here to pick up Frida's plates. She stays here overnight, and just wanted to show you what it looks like. Oh, yes. Some fresh air. So we got quite a lot of trees in our front yard. It's so inspirational to be looking at the trees in the morning. Can't wait to be in the studio and start working. So look who's here. Lisa, it's all right. I'm just talking to the camera. It's okay. Yes, I know we have to go on our walk. This is Lisa's favorite lookout window. Isn't it, sweetie pie?
I've often thought about what it means to be an artist. For me, being an artist means being in it with your full heart and soul. Giving into the practice with every ounce of your being, so much so that it is like gambling with your life. We all know that deciding that you want to be an artist isn't an easy road to take. But when you make that commitment, you are either all in it or not at all. I think you have to be a little bit crazy to be an artist, otherwise you'd go mad. When you wake up in the morning and all you can think about is spending your entire day making art, and when you go to bed and all you can think about is what you're going to paint next, that's when you know you're an artist. Don't ever let anybody tell you you can't be an artist, because the only one you have to convince is yourself. Don't wait for that approval, because it won't come.
Hi, I'm Ilona and welcome to my Enchanting World studio. If you're new here in my channel, well, this is my third video on YouTube, and yes, I am very excited and I hope you're excited too. I'm a Finnish-American artist living here in Atlanta, beautiful city of Atlanta, Georgia, since 2016. And this is my official video number 3. First, I just wanted to tell you what's going on in my life since the last week that I made my video number 2. A lot has been going on. And I was actually chatting to a friend over the weekend, a very dear friend of mine, all the way from my Mexico times. And she was asking me about my videos, and she said, Ilona, what is your goal with these videos? And I thought it was a really valid question, and I was happy that she asked me that, because coincidentally, this past week I've been thinking about goals and what is the purpose of these videos. So the topic this week was I had planned it to be goals and sticking to those goals. And so let's talk a little bit about my goals in general terms. So I usually don't make plans on a really long-term kind of agenda. I usually have a very rough plan for the coming year. I might have exhibitions lined up for the year, so I know which exhibitions I have to make works for. And then I have my personal short-term goals of, like, say, finishing a certain painting for a gallery that is waiting for works from me, or getting my newsletter out there every month on the first or second week, which is usually what I do. So those are my short-term goals or plans. And I have to keep up with all these plans that I have. And now that I'm doing these videos, I have to be even more focused on these goals, and I have to plan my time really well so that I actually have time to do the actual work, which is painting, mostly painting and drawing for me, and basically keep up with all the things that I've planned on doing. But let's go back to what my friend was asking me, like, what is my goal with these videos? Well, I've told you a little bit about myself so far. So I'm a fine artist, and I finished art school in '95. So I've been doing art since actually before then, because I started doing art when I was very young, when I was 16 years old. But I graduated from art school in '95 and had my first art exhibition in '96 in an art gallery. That was like my first serious art exhibition. I had had some not so serious art exhibitions before then, like at libraries and places like that. And I've been a full-time artist since 2002. So I was doing some teaching between '96 and 2002, but in 2002 I decided to become a full-time artist. And I'll tell you that story later. It's not for today. But since then, since 1995, essentially, I've accumulated all this experience on doing art and being a full-time artist. And I've been wanting to share all this information and all these ideas and tips and tricks for a really long time, and I've just been putting it off and off. So the goal of these videos is that I want to share my knowledge with you. Now, you might be a beginner artist, a budding young artist, or maybe you're even not so young anymore, but you're a budding beginning artist and you want to learn. So what I want to do is share some techniques that I've learned over the years, like I did in my previous video where I was teaching how to do art scanning. I also like to talk about the business side of art, which is really, really important if you want to be a full-time artist and live from your artwork. So you have to know how to do that, and it's not easy if you've never done it. And when I finished art school in '95, they didn't teach us any of those tricks. They didn't tell us how we're supposed to sell our art. They only taught us how to actually do the art. So I was clueless. But luckily, after all these years, I've seen a lot and done a lot, and I think I have a pretty good idea of how to manage all that. And that's what I want to teach you. And the way I plan on teaching it is by actually doing my art at the same time, because I have to keep doing my art. Well, have to is not the right way to phrase it. I want to keep doing my art. And as I'm doing my art, I'd like to show you how I do things. Now, for today, I thought that the most logical thing to do would be to continue from my last video, which is the one where I was showing you how to scan the artwork. What I would do normally after scanning the artwork is varnish it. Now, you can't varnish an artwork before scanning it, and the reason why you shouldn't do that, because once you've varnished it, it's gonna be somewhat glossy. Even if you used a matte varnish, it's gonna have a little bit of sheen in it. And if the canvas surface has some sheen on it or gloss, the scan will not come out very well. So remember always to scan your artwork first, or photograph it if you prefer photographing, and then you can varnish it. So I think this glass jar is going to be just fine for the Gamma gloss varnish that we're going to be using. And in case you didn't know, before in the olden times, you couldn't varnish an oil painting until it was at least 6 months old. And the reason for that is because oils dry through oxidization. So what that means is it takes a long time for the oil painting to dry. But now, with this new Gamma gloss varnish, you can varnish your painting already as soon as it's touch dry. So it's really quite wonderful. First, I make sure that there's no dust on the canvas, and I think I already dusted it off the other day, so it should be fine. We have it laying down on an area where it can stay overnight. And now I have the varnish in my hand, which I'm just going to pour right here in the middle. Don't be scared about pouring it down, and then you start brushing it towards the edges. I'm using just a regular Chinese brush. It's hog brush. It's soft. It's very cheap. It's only a few dollars. You can get them pretty much anywhere, and it will do the job just fine. Keep pouring some more. I don't know how well you can see with the light, if you can see the actual reflection or glass-like surface that's appearing on the canvas as I'm putting the varnish on it. But it starts to look, it starts to have this really beautiful deep coloration to it. Really see the colors coming out when you put the varnish on. So at the very end, I always check that I haven't left any little hairs on the surface. And if I have, then I just use the edge of the brush to lift them up. Leave it overnight to dry, and then tomorrow it will be ready to hang. So if you're planning on varnishing your artwork, the way oil paintings dry is through oxidization. So basically what this means is that when oil paints come into contact with oxygen, a chemical reaction happens, and that's how they dry. There's really no way you can speed up the drying rate of an oil painting except by maybe using drying up agents. But drying up agents can sometimes be detrimental to the painting in the long term. So in the historical sense, if you want your paintings to last for centuries, then it's probably not a good idea to use secatives. I prefer to use heat. So I've noticed that heat also speeds up the drying rate of an oil painting, but it has to be a dry heat. And I learned this the hard way. So when I was living in Mexico, I had the ideal situation for oil paintings to dry. Where I was living, the heat was dry, there was no humidity, and it was basically the same weather all year round. So I knew how fast they were going to dry, and it was really easy to work on them. But when I moved to Atlanta, where we have winter, spring, summer, and we had varying rates of drying. So in winter it takes a lot longer for my oil paintings to dry than, say, for example, in summer. But the way that I fixed that was that I got myself a mini split that I installed in my studio, and it gives this heat that is constant, and it speeds up the drying rate of my oil paintings. But it's really never the same as it would be in summer. So take that into consideration when you're waiting for your paintings to dry. You might want to install a little mini split in your studio. That will certainly help if you live in colder climates. Now also it has to do with how thick you paint. If you paint very thick layers of oils, then it's going to take you a long time for that painting to dry. Now, it is known for oil paintings to take up to 5 years actually to completely fully dry. So if you want to varnish your artwork, well, that's going to be a problem, because you're not going to want to or be able to wait for 5 years until you can varnish that painting. You're going to want to sell it or just get it over with, and you don't have that much time to wait. Before, with the old varnishes, you would have to wait for at least 6 months before you could varnish your painting. But now, as we have these new improved varnishes like Gamma varnish, you can varnish it already as soon as it's touch dry. I paint in very thin layers, so typically I only need to wait for maybe 3 or 4 days for the last layer to dry, and then I can varnish it. So yeah, just keep an eye on how thick you paint and determine along those lines how soon you can start varnishing it. This is Jay's story and the time machine. I had been taking a series of photos of Jay for a while now. Jay was then between 14 and 15 years old. She had brown, thick, long, wavy hair and a look in her eyes that I couldn't quite describe to you. It was as if her eyes looked deep and far into the future. I found that look in her eyes quite intriguing, and her expressive eyebrows framing those green-gray eyes. At times her eyes would look gray like the beginning of a storm, and at other times, when the light caught her eyes, they looked green like the moss in a misty forest. As the viewer through the lens, I would ponder where her thoughts might be. I pictured large tropical flowers amongst an array of wild prickly roses and a few odd-looking imaginary friends. Those flowers are unusually big, as if life itself were viewed through a larger lens. I can see through those green emerald eyes a hunger for something more. Amongst the unusual-looking flowers and plants, there is a pink, round-looking machine that resembles a clock. Or might it be some sort of futuristic form of transportation? Perhaps a time machine? Where will this time machine take her? Will it be the past or the future? What beholds inside of it, if we have the courage to step in? Symbology is for me one of the ways in which I like to communicate the inner world of a model through my paintings. So one of the typical questions I always ask my models would be, with which animal do you identify with? The answer to gives me insight to the person's soul that I am about to paint. Jay told me that she identifies with rats, so this unusual answer definitely got me intrigued. I had to find out what rats symbolize as a spirit animal, and this is what I learned. Those who identify themselves with rats as a spirit animal possess strong intuition and have a sharp sense of both opportunity and danger. The rat is an inquisitive and gregarious animal spirit. A few months went by since our initial photo session. Within those 6 months or so, I saw a big change in Jay. It's as if she had blossomed. Her thick, long, brown, wavy hair had turned into a flaming wild pink color. Her eyes looked more emerald green than ever before, with hints of gold. There was a spark in her eyes that I had never seen before and caught my attention. I was eager to begin her painting. I knew there was a story to tell, and this is only the beginning to that story. There is so much more to come. I just wanted to say before I go that your support means so much to me, and if you like my videos, you can show that support by subscribing to my YouTube channel, liking these videos, and leaving me a comment or a question below. I would love to hear from you if you have any questions about the material that I shared with you this week, or if you just want to say hello. Subscribe and like and comment. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.